actually about 8 years old. And I was pretty serious. I was very involved in painting from the time I was a little girl. I was really bad at ballet. I was really bad at gymnastics. My parents tried to do all these things with me, and I was terrible at all of them. And then one day we were visiting a newborn in the family, and I was very young, and my aunt decided that she would take me aside and teach me how to paint with watercolors to keep me busy while everyone else was paying attention to the baby. And my parents, everyone came back and saw the first 2 paintings I did. I did a tiger, and I did a boa constrictor. And everyone thought they were really good, so my parents decided to enroll me in art lessons, and then from then on I was just painting ever since. Growing up, it was my fantasy to come and live in New York City. That was just, when you're growing up in the country, all you want to do is move to the big city where everything's really exciting. And now that I'm here, the country in New York, I feel like, in a way, growing up in the country, now that I'm in the city, I sort of have remembrances of that are in my work now, and I sort of bring that part of me here to the city. Living in the city can be really dehumanizing, I think, just having all of this concrete around everywhere, and I find that nature, just being able to see trees and green sometimes. On the other side of the building from my studio, there's this really wonderful park where there's these beautiful sycamore trees and lawns, just big green lawns and gardens everywhere. And I like to go out and walk in the park and just look at the trees and look up. And I just find that having that time to spend outside with a little bit of green is really important living here in the city. I find that I constantly, wherever I am, I sort of always fantasize about other places. Like when I was in nature, I was thinking about the city. And now that I'm here in the city, I think about nature all the time and how I just want to be outside. And for me, art is sort of an escape from everyday life. And by painting these images of nature, it's sort of my way of taking myself to a place that I want to be. Well, when I sort of first resumed painting after school, everything was very instantaneous and emotional. I would take my arms and go in broad strokes across the canvas and use the palette knife and just sort of like approach things very violently and emotionally. And it was just sort of this very expressionistic way of doing things. And I feel like the more I work, now when I start a painting, I sort of think about where I'm going with it, and I take a more measured approach. I think more about the colors that I'm going to use before I start, and I plan things. I still leave room to just sort of go a little crazy, listen to music, and move around, but I take the time to plan, and I think in the end that makes for a better painting. I think studying religion, it all kind of comes back to play into my work. I like to think of, especially in like these newer paintings with the looking up, of just sort of this ecstatic quality. I think with religion, people look to something that's bigger than themselves or outside of themselves, and I think with these sort of very natural works that draw you up, I'm sort of taking that meditative quality and trying to capture that, or trying to create something that makes you meditate, that sort of makes you contemplate something outside of yourself. I'm just sort of trying to create these images that draw you in. And I know my painting's successful if somebody stops and stares at it for a while, and I can tell that their eyes are moving around the canvases and just sort of getting sucked into the shapes, but at the same time thinking about what the shapes are, if that makes sense. That there are these things that are very obvious, like it's obvious that these paintings with the trees are trees, but at the same time there's abstract shapes and movements happening where the colors and the light and the dark play against each other in ways that do things to your eye and your brain subtly. I've been working on these 2 series for a while that I'd like to continue with. They're sort of, they're concurrent and related, but also very separate. One is these images of the trees that are looking straight up, as is behind me, and the other series is a more narrative series that's the image of this figure in a red cape that's traversing through landscapes. So one of these is a very terrestrial, very grounded narrative series, and then the other one is, I like to think of it as celestial. You're just sort of looking up, and it's less narrative and more immediate and ecstatic. And I'd like to continue doing both for a while. and just see where I can go with it. There's so many things I can do with the looking up. There's just all these different combinations of times of year and things with the trees that I want to go to. Maybe start incorporating buildings as well. But then beyond that, I don't know, eventually I'd like to start working with other mediums. I think I do tend to go through phases with colors. So I'll use specific things a lot for a while. It has less to do with my subject matter than the mood that I'm in. And there are certain colors that I just tend to gravitate towards. In general, I gravitate towards colors that have the cancer warnings on them. So I like cadmiums and cobalts and things that tend to be not so good for me, so I try to be good about washing my hands and putting on creams to sort of prevent them from getting into your skin. But I find the colors that are supposed to be bad for you are actually the brightest. It's because they're radioactive and have a half-life. But I really love cobalt blues and cadmium reds, particularly. Well, I think trees are trees are what I have the most immediate access to, just because I can go outside and see trees, which is nice. But I do love, there is something beautiful and voluptuous about the forms of trees, the way the branches spiral and intersect. I really love the way light comes through moving leaves and the shadows they cast. And I mean, just in terms of what trees symbolize in mythology and in terms of symbolism, they're representative of life. Actually, two of the paintings that I have on the wall over there, I don't know if you'll get those, but I've actually named them Bacchus and Philemon after the Greek myth, where the elderly couple is rewarded with eternal life by sort of being turned into sort of one intertwined trees. Anyway, I saw a tree upstate that was one tree at the roots together, and then it separated into two trees with a hole in it. And then there was this weird bridge between it, and then it sort of separated out again. So it was two trees and one tree at the same time. And that's actually the first thing that got me on my tree phase a while ago. I just saw that and thought of that myth and knew that I had to paint this tree. I actually took a picture on my cell phone and came back to my studio and painted it. There's a whole institutional structure of, you know, where there are these roles, like the gallery, the artist, the curator, the collector, and, you know, everyone feels like they have to take this very specific path. You need to go out and meet curators or get into galleries, and things have to be done in a very specific way. But no one teaches you what this way is, so you're sort of just adrift at sea hoping you meet the right people. So I think that's challenging for a lot of people. I also don't think it has to be like that for artists. I think the thing about artists is that we're innovators, and we should be able to sort of figure out how to market our own work and sort of get it out there ourselves. I think I've actually been okay at doing that. I've managed to sell my work privately without showing in galleries to this point. I mean, I've been in one or two group shows that have been at galleries, but on the whole, I've been self-representing, and I think artists need to be more empowered to represent themselves. I think a lot of artists are taught that all that they can do is make art and that they need these other people to handle them, but they don't. I think everyone needs to learn how to be a little bit more autonomous. Well, I don't really believe that. I mean, I don't think there are any new ideas at this point, so I think as opposed to trying to do something that's new or different just to create something that's new or different is silly. I try to make work that I like to look at, and I would hope that other people would like to look at it too. So, I mean, that's really where I'm coming from. I'm not trying to do something that has never been thought of before. I'm sure someone has painted trees looking up before. I'm sure that, you know, there are photographs people have pointed up, and, you know, I'm not going to claim an original idea. I'm just hoping I'm presenting something that people want to look at. And yeah, I think it's really easy to get caught up in what other people are doing, and I think that's a mistake. I think it's just really important to focus on what I'm doing and try to make work that I like.